Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show one more time. We're going to have a good time today. We don't have a guest today, but we have topics today that are of utmost importance, should I say. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. Well, you know, why is it that we always have to say that? We're going to talk about Donald Trump. Well, we're going to talk about Donald Trump in some different kinds of contexts. I think everybody knows what's going on right now. Everybody knows that the country is in sort of dire straits given who this guy is right now. So anyway, the title of the show today is Trump's Staff Proves If You Sleep with Dogs, You Rise with Fleas. But before I get started, I want to remind folks that the algorithms for Facebook has changed, and in the process it has caused us dearly as far as reach is concerned, as far as getting our message out. So what we're asking everybody, if you are watching this right now, please go ahead and share it immediately so that the Google algorithm would get it into more feeds. So if you're watching this now, we're asking you to go ahead and share this this particular video right now while you're watching, so that it'll get into the feed, so that we can ensure that we reach more people. Yes, Blog Talk Radio hasn't changed, so we're still reaching people through Blog Talk Radio, but we want to reach have a wider audience, and we can only do that in a social media domain where everybody participates. So I'm asking you to not only watch the show, not only see the show, but also share the show. If you are emailing as well, email the show and let people know what we are doing today going forward. Remember, this is a daily show every day at 3 p.m. Central I was about to say Central Standard, but we can't say Central Standard, just 3 p.m. Central Time in the United States. And people from anywhere, any other part of the world, you can figure out what time that makes it for where you are at. Again, the title of the show today, Trump's Staff Proves If You Sleep with Dogs, You Rise with Fleas. Subtitle, The Trump Administration is a Scourge, but progressives must continue to do other things. We can't just continue our constant attack on Donald Trump. I mean, everybody knows that he's not good for society, but we can't just keep talking about Donald Trump. We also have to start talking about what progressives are going to do if they are honored to be given the power from the people. So it is clear the people serving Donald Trump share his proclivities, whether born from working with Trump or intrinsic. It is clear the entire Trump administration is a large growing cancer that is consuming the entire nation. The media is coming around to the reality, but the question is it too late? Is it too late that the media has come to the table? Folks, the new ones that are coming in, please remember to go ahead and share these videos as soon as possible to ensure that we can get more of this into the feed, given the change in the Facebook algorithm. Now, folks, I also want to remind you that this is not anything new, and this has similar things has happened before. We've had the Red Scare in the past. We've had a lot of times when democracy was in danger. This one seems a little bit more rash, but we've been here before. There is so much effort expelled by media, bloggers, and individuals on the Trump cabal that, you know what, not much is left undone. I mean, everybody has just about said everything that they wanted to say about El Señor Trump. The question is now, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Progressives must come up. Or before that, the question is, how do we win 2018 with all the noise drowning out the positive message? How do we do it? How do we win with all the noise that's drowning out positive messages? The message saying this is what we are going to do. We have to come up with a message that doesn't only attack Trump, but that also tells folk what we are going to do for them. Very important. Progressives must come up with an easy to articulate message that explains to Americans what Trump has done to hurt them personally in 10% of the message. And thereafter, tell them how they will first fix Trump's destruction, and second, then move forward with how they will move the bar. I mean, you cannot simply tell folks how bad Trump is. The world knows that Trump is a scourge. The world knows that Trump is a danger to society. The world knows all of that. We have to come up with a message that sticks to people. And we're going to talk about that. And I hope some of you will call in and talk about that. 646-716-5812 is the telephone number. 646-716-5812. Would love to hear from more of you today, if at all possible. Anyway, from the news feed. Unbelievable. Trump defends Rob Porter, his staff secretary, who punched his wife and left her with a black eye. He also pulled his naked wife out of the bathroom. Now, Trump says Porter is professing his innocence and he was an excellent worker. Wow. You still have to ask yourself, why is it again that women actually voted for Donald Trump? We don't quite know, but here is what he said.
As you probably know, he says he's innocent, and I think you have to remember that. He said very strongly yesterday that he's innocent. So you'll have to talk to him about that, but we absolutely wish him well. Did a very good job while he was at the White House. Thank you very much, everybody. It was very sad when we heard about it, and certainly he's also very sad. Now, he also, as you probably know, he says he's innocent. And I think you have to remember that. He said very strongly yesterday that he's innocent. So you'll have to talk to him about that. But we absolutely wish him well. Did a very good job while he was at.
Our president decides to say, after this woman punches his wife, our president decides to say, he was a great worker. Wow. He was a great worker. So therefore, it is okay for him to punch his wife. And we don't believe that this woman is actually telling the truth, because remember, the man says he's innocent, even though there's a picture with her, black eye, purported to be done by him. Now, this is what we have living in the White House right now. All right, what else from the news feed? Another asteroid is about to skim past the Earth. CBSAP says another asteroid is headed our way, the second this week, but there's no need to worry. The newly discovered space rock will pass within 39,000 miles. That sounds like a lot. That isn't a lot, folks. 39,000 miles. That's about 64,000 kilometers of Earth on Friday. That's less than 1/5 the distance to the moon. So in other words, it's coming closer to us than the moon is to us. So kind of remember, if the calculations are off by a few inches or so, that could change the entire path, and we could be looking at an asteroid coming to the Earth. I doubt that, but anyhow. That's less than 1/5 the distance to the Earth, designated 2018 CB. The asteroid is an estimated 50 feet to 130 feet. That's 50 meters by 40 meters in size, possibly bigger than the one that exploded over Russia 5 years ago this month. And of course, there is the stock market, and I don't know what the stock market is doing right now, but let me Let me look it up before we talk about that, because we talk about people having, the politics having a direct influence on your politics, and how progressives need to show people how these, what a swing. It was going between minus 300 nights, now plus 300 and fallen. So I guess it probably closed at 3:30. Is that what time is it? Yeah, probably closed at 3:30. I find that quite interesting. I think what we have are the vultures coming into the market to buy on the dips. What that means is they give people a false hope that the market is rising again. So if you take a look at that curve for where it closed, the curve was going all the way up, and then a sell began, and you see a big dip again, even though it ended on a positive. So, folks, if you're playing the stock market, be very, very careful. If you're coming on or just getting on to the site, please, folks, we need you to share this video. We need you to share this show, because, again, Facebook has changed the algorithm, and we need to make sure that this gets into people's threads, people's feeds. So if you will, please make sure to share the show. Okay, last news item for now. Stock market likely crashed because of Republican colossal mistake that proves they know nothing about economics. And here's what Paul Krugman had to say about that. Republicans preached fiscal austerity when the economy needed stimulus, and had turned to fiscal profligacy now that it doesn't. If this surprises you, either you've been completely oblivious to the reality of the modern GOP for the past decade, or you're a reflexive centrist, which is pretty much the same thing. I want to stop now. I'm not done reading what Krugman had to say. But is it not ironic? Is it not ironic that Krugman, who I consider a very centrist capitalist economist, is calling other people centrist, as if he is left of center? This guy believes a whole lot in the same sort of things that any other neoliberal economist believes. And again, this is not an attack on Krugman, because I pretty much like Krugman. He was right on stating that interest rates weren't going to go up with all the deficit spending that occurred under President Obama. So I have a lot of respect for him. But at the same time, we have to come to the conclusion that these guys are all strong capitalists without thinking about how to mitigate the real damages that our form of capitalism is affecting on the vast majority of Americans. We need people like Krugman, who really knows his stuff, to do the numbers and tell Americans the truth, and not tell Americans an ideology. We don't need to hear a capitalist ideology. We need to hear capitalism as a tool, and as a tool only. That every form of economics should be practiced in the United States for a particular cause. In other words, when it comes to utilities, and when it comes to hospital, and when it comes to medicine, and when it comes to healthcare, they don't belong in the capital markets. There are certain items that can be in the capital markets as long as it has no effect on people. And if anybody want to talk to me about that, I'd love to hear your views. I'd love for you to call in. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I can always give a soliloquy, but it's always better when we get callers in, because when callers come in, we get a chance to see where the minds of people are. We get a chance to see where we want to go. So, folks, I'd love for you to call in. Don't be shy. I'm a very nice guy. 646-716-5812. Let me continue with Krugman's statement. Last sentence said, if this surprises you, either you've been completely oblivious to the reality of the modern GOP for the past decade, or you're a reflexive centrist, which is pretty much the same thing. But how bad a thing is this fiscal profligacy? It is not good. It is not good. It means higher debt, which will in turn reduce the fiscal space for responding to the next crisis. Let me tell you what he means by that. When we had the crisis in 2008, the Feds had room to move. In other words, they could lower interest rates to stimulate the economy. They could do something known as quantitative easing, which means they just threw a whole lot of money into the economy. But you know what? They've been doing that for a long time. Yes, they've been reducing quantitative easing for quite a while now. But that said, there are still some other issues that need to be that they don't have any options. So let's say the economy tanks again. Can you really go lower than zero in interest? Actually, you can. But what it means is that you put money in the bank, and you start getting negative interest rates. They start giving away money, man. Do you really want that? So, because actually it causes your monies to tank in the current sphere of things, that is. So that is really what he means. Now continue, which is pretty much the same thing. But how bad? It means high debt, which will in turn reduce the fiscal space for responding to the crisis. It will also crowd out investment, hurting long run growth. But I've been seeing some people suggesting that rising deficits are going to hurt the economy in the short run, perhaps even cause a recession. I don't know about that. I mean, Economics 101 says you keep spending like hell. What really happens is you're stimulating the economy, and if you're stimulating the economy, there's no recession there. The only thing that causes a recession after overstimulating is as soon as it gets out of hand. As soon as that stimulation gets out of hand, that people have so much money in their hands that everybody can afford to buy everything, prices start to go up. And what governments do when prices go up is they try to shut that down to prevent runaway inflation. So what they'll do is they'll increase interest rates, they'll take money out of the economy. And in doing so, that is what brings on a recession. If you feel or if you believe Trump is going to get the guy that he put there in charge of the Feds to do anything negative before the election, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you, because that will not occur. Anyhow, before I go to the blog of the week, you know what? Let me go ahead and check to see if people have some messages here on the left some messages here on the Facebook page. Let's go ahead and read some of those. Bear with me 1 second as it comes up, as it pulls up, and we'll talk about those. Okay, here we go. Well, here's I thought we go, but it's a little slow. All right, here we go. Angela McConnell Reed. I have a question that is a bit off topic. Growing up, I was taught that the United States was a democracy and nations like China and Russia were republics. They were seen as communist countries. Now suddenly, I see lots of people calling the U.S. a republic and saying it always has been. What has happened to cause the change in view? Why do so many today seem to think we should follow their lead? All right, let me do a little explaining here. The United States has always been a republic. Yes, it's a republic. It's a representative democracy. What that really means is that the people who vote, you elect people who operate on your behalf. In other words, you elect some, and then they are the ones who decide what the laws are going to be. So it's really an indirect democracy. And there's nothing wrong with that. It makes things easier if it's implemented correctly. Absolutely nothing wrong with that if it's implemented correctly. The problem is, rarely, as it is right now, do we have the proper implementation. As an example, a whole lot more people voted for Hillary Clinton, but we have a president who is Donald Trump, because of an aberration within the Constitution that in my opinion took the Republic a bit too far. We have this stuff called as opposed to the president being elected by a popular vote, he's elected by Electoral College, and with gerrymandering and other machinations, you can actually lose the Well, let me correct that, because I don't want to get a mistake. Gerrymandering has zero. Let me make sure that is true. Oh, actually, that is gerrymandering affect the presidency as well, because it affects districts, and given that it affects districts, and you vote by district, you know what? I don't want to misinform. All the states that have rules that says the amount of people the majority of the voters in the state is the one who all the Electoral College votes go to. So in those states that operate under that principle, meaning whoever wins the popular vote in that state wins all the electoral votes. Gerrymandering has no effect. Now, there are a couple of states where you have electoral votes that are partitioned by, in other words, the one person can win one district and the other person win the other districts, and that is how their electoral votes are partitioned. And so it's not a one-to-one correlation as far as gerrymandering is concerned. But anyhow, ma'am, it is a republic, and it has always, as what they says, has always been a republic. The representatives in the republic that represents you in this republic, they are democratically elected, but because of gerrymandering, and we have an aberration in which, or I shouldn't say, because of the electoral college, we have an aberration within the Constitution that allows for the person who hasn't won the popular vote democratically to still become the president. So, and that is what we're living through that with the first, with George W. Bush's first election, and we're living through that with Trump's first election as well. So I think we have no need for an electoral college. I think it needs to be abolished, and hopefully somebody will do that and do that soon. Anyhow, you know what time it is, and I think we can go there now. You know what time it is.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, the title of the blog post today. The title of the blog post is Chuck Todd Goes Off on Trump and His Administration Like Never Before. I would never believe that I would make that my blog post, but I was so, I loved it so much that I had to do that. But anyhow, you must watch Chuck Todd blast Donald Trump and his inept administration. He was in a form seldom seen by any of the cable news networks who for many years tried to stay in Trump's good grace. Chuck Todd annihilates the Trump administration by enumerating its scandals. Anyhow, Chuck Todd went on a Trump destructing tirade on Meet the Press Daily that all must see as he strung Trump's scandals and ineptitudes in one long monologue. It feels like we've reached a level of crazy in the White House, and it is difficult to take it anymore, Todd said. Reality TV appearances, tabloid gossips, conspiracy theories, name-calling, vulgarities, and level of egomania few have ever seen in Washington. Okay. And that's saying something. It's like we're living inside of a parody. What would happen if Donald Trump became president? Omarosa would probably work in the West Wing, and then she'd leave to go on Big Brother to dish about administration secrets. Ha! Oh, wait. That really happened. That really happened. All of that is what Chuck Todd said. Look, it is hard to believe all of those scandals and evil deeds occurred in an administration just 1 year old, but it did. It should have one fear in what else is to come. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of us know what else is to come, assuming that the department does its job. We know what's coming. Assuming that the what is it called? Not the State Department, but assuming that the people who charges you. What Chuck Todd failed to acknowledge is his and the rest of the media's complicity in making Donald Trump president of the United States because of the dereliction of their duty. So they are directly responsible for the election of Donald Trump, and now they are wondering, how did this happen? Look at all these things that are occurring. How could this possibly happen? It's not possible. Anyhow, had the media called out Trump as they are required to do as the Fourth Estate, it is clear that the Trump mystique would have never risen. They made him plausible. They normalized the then candidate. Now, the crazy that Todd talks about is no longer the exception. It is the rule. And folks are so used to it that the president paying off a porn star does not even seem strange. nor does it put his president in any danger. Can you really believe what would have happened to President Obama if somehow it was found out that he paid off a porn star? Think about all the things that that have happened under the Trump administration. Had it been President Obama, what do you think would have happened? Folks, the new ones that are coming in, please remember to share these programs to ensure that we get into the feed. Again, I must repeat, the Facebook feed, the Facebook algorithm has changed, and it has cut our penetration into people's news feeds by more than 90%. So whereas right now we should have several hundred people watching, it keeps fluctuating, just 100 and change right now. So let's go ahead and make sure that these guys are not able to cripple independent media. Please make sure to share. We need you. You are the one that's going to save progressive media in many different ways. So finishing the blog, it goes as follows. Now, the crazy that Todd talks about is no longer the exception, it's the rule. And folks are so used to it that the president paying off a porn star does not even seem strange, nor does it put his presidency in any danger. You know, it's shameful, but it's true. It's shameful, but it's true. Hi, Mr. Bill McLeod, and hi, Mr. Tom Hines. Angela G. McConnell Reed. Great. Folks, don't forget, share. Let's get it going. There is a real question now. Can we recover from this, or has Trump made the country into his image, an immoral scourge where values are irrelevant? Where values are irrelevant. You know what I want to do now? I want you to, let's see, I want you to check this out. This is how it sounded when Todd did it. And I think it was great. Coming from Todd, I tell you what, I was impressed.
Feels like we've reached a level of crazy in this White House, and it's difficult to take it anymore. Reality TV appearances, tabloid gossip, conspiracy theories, name-calling, vulgarities, and a level of egomania few have ever seen in Washington. And that's saying something. It's like we're living inside a parody from 3 years ago. Consider, what would happen if Donald Trump became president? Omarosa would probably work in the West Wing, and then she'd leave to go on Big Brother to dish about administration secrets. Oh, wait, that actually happened. Folks, we're not even surprised by this stuff anymore. Just think about what we've seen or endured in the last 13 months of this presidency. The Twitter battles with a rival nuclear power, members of his own party, the special counsel, TV host, a Gold Star widow, the Justice Department, mayors, senators, governors, our allies, many people in between. How about the conspiracy theories? Obama wiretapped me. I won the popular vote. Russian meddling's a hoax. The deep state, Justice Department, and who knows? Maybe the Access Hollywood tape is a fake too. The immorality, racist language about immigrants from S-hole countries, defending neo-Nazis, endorsing an accused child molester for U.S. Senate. The ego, the dear leader style cabinet meetings, talk of a military parade, the inaugural crowd sizes, alternative facts, bragging about his election win all the time, from the CIA Memorial Wall to the Boy Scout Jamboree. How about the vulgarities? The White House communications director publicly accusing another White House advisor of trying to, shall we say, perform a sex act on himself. Other advisors constantly dishing about their own president, including a cabinet secretary reportedly calling him a moron. How about the cliffhangers, saying, tune in next time to see what happens on NAFTA, staff shakeups, Oval Office recordings, talking to Mueller, a government shutdown, even nuclear war. And then there's the tabloid fodder. Who's sleeping with who in the White House? His now public affair with porn star or porn supporting actress, allegedly paying her off to keep quiet. And then just this week, White House Staff Secretary Rob Porter resigned after allegations surfaced on a British gossip site, no less, of domestic abuse involving 2 ex-wives. And the White House statements defending him came from a press shop run by the woman he's rumored to be dating. All of this is the legacy of our country's first reality TV star president, where everything is personal and it's all about the show. Folks, nobody should feel good about any of this. Even if you're a Trump supporter, there's no way to get anything done. And there's no way the president can fulfill the promises to voters he made in this environment that he's created.
Think about that, folks. Think about that. That is coming from Chuck Todd. You know, I'm no fan of Chuck Todd. That's because I pretty much think Chuck Todd so many times have dropped the ball. But when he went through that list, I just couldn't help. I just couldn't help it. Anyhow, folks, telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. And I think I've got John on the line. Is this John on the line?
Yeah, how you doing, Egberto? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, my friend. What's going on?
Oh, I'm just listening to your blog post. Let me start with something that I think that I'm going to just repeat it again, just because I think that it'd really help you. You should really be broadcasting on YouTube. You would get a lot more hits on YouTube. Because there are people on YouTube who are specifically looking for progressive, people posting there. It's a much larger audience. Facebook Live is a very much an older audience who aren't. I'm not saying it's a good audience, and I'm glad you can get the feedback. But they also have chats on YouTube. Also, there's a chat room. Where people chat all the time. So anyway, that's just my suggestion. I think that would be much better for you. I know you said it's at some point you.
Let me give you some good news. I already have it set up for YouTube. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that the bandwidth, all of that works out fine. I have the bandwidth now. I'll be doing them simultaneously.
Very good.
I think you should be
very
happy
good
for that.
One other thing is, I'm sorry to be negative about this, but whenever you don't, you're always complaining about mainstream media, and we've had this conversation for many years. Sometimes I defend the people because if you are a straight journalist, it's really not your job to be an opinion journalist. There are straight journalists, there are opinion journalists. And also even the straight journalists, I think, have done a fairly good job. Certain ones are bad, certain ones are good, but a lot of them have done a good job exposing Trump during the campaign, exposing Trump as the president. But there's plenty of media outlets, alternative media outlets, and I never see you posting anything from any kind of alternative media outlet.
Actually, I think I have.
Instead of all, go ahead.
I think I have. I believe it or not, there's one particular one I know that you're not fond of, and that's a man that just died from the AP, from a Consortium News. But I also I pick up stuff from Vox. I pick up stuff from some other rags that are not very well known. And the way I normally do it, though, they'll be embedded with a link in the blog. One of the reasons, though, that you'll see me hit the MSNBCs and the CNNs and so forth pretty hard. When I say hit them hard, I mean that I reference these guys a lot, is because this is a lot of what people are watching. These are the ones with that have market penetration right now, if you will. And much of what I do is to refute what a whole lot of times these guys come out with. Now, this time for Chuck Todd, it was a positive for Chuck Todd, but you know how I've rattled Chuck Todd so much so that I've gotten tweets before. But I see your point that maybe we should expose more of these guys so that we sort of form give these guys more visibility, that other people would go to the Talking Points memo or the other rags. So point taken. Go ahead.
But I'm not talking just about print. I'm talking about actual media. Like TYT. And I'm not saying everything on TYT. Certain things are really bad, but
what I like to hear from
TYT has done good things, and it's an audience that I remember when you had your daughter on. Your daughter was saying that she doesn't watch any corporate media,
yes.
And there are just tens of millions of millennials who feel the same way. They cannot stand MSNBC. They cannot stand CNN, and so I think that the way to reach them is by giving them positive feedback from other channels that feel the same way you do, or even if you don't, if you have a disagreement, even if you generally agree with them, if you have a disagreement, among people you generally agree with, point that out also.
Oh yeah.
As far as Paul Krugman, I wouldn't really call him a neoliberal because, neoliberals are really people who want privatization. And, I'm not saying that I haven't read him as much in the last few years as I did before. But, I have read several of his books, and I don't think he's really promoting privatization. As far as
let me just
things
say,
that more private. Go ahead.
I love Paul Krugman. I think he's a darn good economist. What I do believe, just like with most American economists, except for the very few like Richard Wolff and others, they are so entrenched into the capitalist ideology that they still. If you ask Paul Krugman if we should socialize medicine, Paul Krugman is not going to tell you directly yes. He's going to find some reasons to tell you why some other thing should work, as I've heard him say before. I've seen him at Netroots, and you would never hear him talk. I think what we need are economists that would say exactly what I said before, and that is, we are going to partition this economy. The economy that materially affects absolutely everybody in the country needs to be socialized, and the part of the economy that doesn't shouldn't. And as an example, my personal preference is that utilities, energy, and healthcare, those should all be socialized. And when it comes to creation of products, the types of products I develop, software, mixers that I'm using to broadcast, all these other types of products could be in whatever type of economy you want. Market economy, if that's what you want to call it, yeah, that's fine. But there are certain areas within this economy that should be socialized. We've made that word such a toxic word in this country right now that we cannot have an intelligent conversations and otherwise intelligent economists. And I sat down with Richard Wolff. In fact, Richard Wolff sends me emails all the time when he wants certain things printed. I've sat down with Richard Wolff before and spoken, and he's one of the few that will go out there and tell you why what is out there now simply cannot work and will fall on its face. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Wolff is okay. I mean, I'll just be, honest here. I mean, essentially, he's a Marxist, and I'm not. I believe that. I mean, one of the things I've been wanting to. I think we did have a conversation with this several months ago, but I want to just address it because you keep saying this, and I wonder, if you wonder why you keep saying this.
Okay.
Whenever you talk about capitalism, you always say the free market, and let me just kind of say that. Certain words are, like socialism. I mean, if you look at the definitions, usually saying most dictionaries will say it's put out by the state only.
Right.
But I mean, the way that democratic socialism in Europe is defined, usually the Scandinavian countries and several other countries is a mixed economy, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
In several of the Scandinavian countries, they have what you were talking about. In other words, a mix of utilities, healthcare, and what was the third one you had?
Utilities, healthcare. It is utilities
energy,
and energy.
right?
Yeah. In fact,
right.
Norway.
That's actually.
In Norway, if you take
that's actually fairly.
Norway, what happens? Sorry, we have sort of a delay. That's why sometimes we step on each other. So, folks, if you're listening, I apologize for that. But in Norway, what you have, in fact, is the oil. Let me give. Hold your thought, because I don't want to lose this one here. We look at something like energy, and we look at something like Norway. Everybody, I think all Norwegians are somehow stockholders in their energy, and they make their social state is funded by the energy. It should really be the same in the United States. People should come to the realization that nobody put oil in the ground. So while oil happens to be there. If you happen to jump on own a piece of land and somehow oil was discovered, what made that oil yours? It's a part of the entire country. That should belong to. It's not something you produced. Now, the people who mine these things should be compensated for mining it, but not compensated as far as royalties for owning it. And that is those are the sort of concepts that Americans have been taught not to understand. And when you look up the definition of socialism in the dictionary. I don't. I'll wager you that the definition of socialism and communism in the dictionary is rather is pretty much the same. I looked it up in a Webster dictionary and found out that it was all production resources are controlled by the state, which isn't the case. Which isn't anything we're talking about here. What we're talking about is you're exactly right.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. I mean, the point that I was trying to make is also, like you use the words "our revolution," and so, like, whenever I heard "our revolution," I was like, I don't really like that term because revolution connotes violence.
Scares people.
But I mean, I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna. I mean, obviously, Bernie doesn't support violence, and so I mean, he's using it in a way that's different from the definition. But when you talk about free market system, I mean, I think that's actually something that most of the libertarians use, and what it connotes is essentially a lack of regulation. And I know that you want strong regulation within a system. So I don't know. So whenever you say that, I'm like, I kind of cringe. Like, why are you saying that when I know you want strong regulation?
I think you hear me say free enterprise.
And it's a phrase. So I mean, you can't really look it up like you can a singular word.
Right.
But I mean, my point is that it's really the free market system is really used by hardcore Republicans and libertarians for a lack of regulation. So.
Okay,
anyway,
let me. I think
my 2 cents.
No. You can give your 2 cents, your 4 cents, your 8 cents, your 20 cents. But here it is, John. I don't think I use the word. I rarely. I don't. In fact, I don't think I use free market. I think I use free enterprise. Right.
Right, free, but it's the same thing. The free enterprise. It's the people who use that word. I mean, if you can put that term in, and you can see how the people who use it are libertarians and all people who don't want regulation.
I want.
I mean,
here's what I really want. Here's what I want to promote. When I say free enterprise, I mean that you're free to have whatever enterprise you want. Okay. In other words. Free enterprise mean if you decide to wake up in the morning and you want to form a software company, the government doesn't tell you can't form yourself a software company. If you want, it has nothing to do with whether the government can regulate it or not. I want the government to be able to regulate anything that's going to have an effect on somebody else. Likewise, I want the government to regulate something to make sure that we don't get economic and wealth disparity as we get today. So those are the things that I stand for. And where there are ambiguities, that's why we have listeners like yourself, because what you do by challenging the nomenclature or challenging the phraseology that I use is to clarify it for those that are listening, which I think it's important because, we don't want anybody walking away thinking that I believe in free enterprise with no regulations. Well, if you thought that was a possibility of what people would believe that I'm saying, well, I think they're corrected now. That's not at all what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, I know that's not what you were saying, but I mean, I'm just saying, that's the common phraseology.
Exactly.
That's the way most people, when they hear that, that's what they think, I mean, I know you. I know what you believe in.
Right.
And so, I mean, but I mean, this also has to deal with, there's a big push, against capitalism right now. And I think you've even said some things, and I think, I mean, you also just said right recently that if you want to start a software company, and I think that should apply to everything. If you want to be a musician, if you want to be an artist, if you want to start a restaurant, or whatever you want to do, you should be able to do it. But I mean, we should also, like you said before, have tax the people who are successful at a high rate, so they can enjoy their success. But they also, we should have a society where everybody has health care. Everybody has a right to a free education. We're treating the environment properly. We're getting our, having social justice put in through our court system, having, money to help, the police. We do need a police system, but it's fair to everybody, even minorities. And right now, that obviously isn't happening. So I mean, all of these things, I think that you talk about quite often. But I mean, I think that I just don't like the idea of condemning, capitalism, because there's still a lot of good things. I think you have to be very, very precise about the things about capitalism, I guess the indulgences of capitalism, which are, obviously things like the way Wall Street has operated for many, many years, especially during the Reagan era, and, Reagan era on. And also, work regulations that are lax, and all these regulations. Trump comes in and he's saying we're going to kill regulations, and what he's really talking about is that people aren't going to have the same work regulations as far as their health is concerned. As far as taking advantage of workers, you saw that with the tips, right, where now they can pool the tips together and kind of screw over the people who work in the restaurant industry. I mean, you see it everywhere. You see it in the privatization of education with Betsy DeVos. You see it with the private prison systems. They want to privatize everything, and so I mean, that's the negative aspect of capitalism. And I mean, just the simple, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just tell you first of all, my definition of the part of what does capitalism mean, right? Before I answer that though, I want to go to the Facebook page, because Marianne Tierno Langell asks, please explain progressive. Progressive is refers to people who want to move something forward. Progress. That's where it comes from. Progress. We want to grow. We want to expand the rights of people. We want to expand the wealth of people. We want to expand access. People to have access to all people to have access to health care. Those are values that are considered progressive. Conservative means comes from the term conserve. Conserve something that you've already had. Okay, so the people that tend to be conservatives are people, and again, there's social conservative and economic conservative. Economic conservatives usually are people who already have, because what they're trying to do is conserve some sort of financial status quo to ensure that they don't lose it. And how do they think they're going to lose it? They believe they're going to lose it because they're going to have to pay higher taxes to support other people who don't have it. They want to conserve for themselves. Progressives say, no, we're all in a boat together, and in order for all of us to make progress, we have to have some sort of equitable redistribution. But a lot of people, when they hear the things like redistribution, they throw up a flag and say, well, look, I earned it. My contention is, no, they haven't. Society is interdependent, and the interdependency of society means that absent other people doing other things, you would not have the ability to have made what you've made. So therefore, you have a responsibility to society to give back. The difference between progressives, in my opinion, and conservatives is that progressives believe in paying their due. Progressives believe that that it's not only about them. Conservatives generally want to keep things among themselves. Now, some would say, well, that conservatives believe in charity or whatever. Yeah, but they believe in controlled charity. In other words, if I decide that I want to be charitable and I decide I would like to give you something to allow you to have a better life, that is my personal and individual decision. Progressives believe that moving society forward should be a governmental issue. It should be society of the government, we the people of the United States, and the people of the United States is what forms the government. Now, through the Paul Manifesto and all these other documents that were designed to indoctrinate us all, they have tried to remove government from we the people. They've tried to abstract government from we the people. And once they've abstracted government from we the people, they can dog the government. They can say government is bad, because no longer is saying government bad means we the people are bad. But you can never change that. If government is bad, we the people are bad, because we the people are the ones who put government in there. To mitigate that, some of the then conservatives would say, but no, there's this bureaucracy that's there, a part of government, that somehow exists on its own. And Trump takes it a step further. He calls it the deep state, that there are these bureaucrats who have full control, as if the elected officials aren't the ones with full control. It's all bogus. The reality of the matter is elected officials can go in there and do as they please. This stuff about a deep state and all of that sort of thing, it's not quite accurate. Now, there are some issues with the FBI, the CIA, and so forth. I don't want to get into that area yet, because that is basically not the area folks are talking about. There's quite a bit of negative within these organizations that should be mitigated, but it has nothing to do with the evils that Donald Trump has put upon us. Now, going back to the topic that, one of the topics I really wanted to cover today is, because I was telling people that we need to stop just talking about Donald Trump, and we need to create a progressive message that actually sells. So what we have to do is tell folks what it is that Trump did that was bad, in other words, to destroy the economy, and what are you going to do when you get into office, and make it realistic. Because the one thing Republicans know to do is turn everything that you are going to do into tax spend and taking poor middle-class people's money away. But I'm going to take that in a little bit further. But John wanted to talk about capitalism. And what I want to tell John about capitalism is as follows. When I talk about capitalism, I'm not necessarily just talking about the middle-sized companies or anything like that. I'm talking about capitalism as the instrument, as the instruments of capital. In other words, turning companies and corporations into instruments. When you look at Exxon is a company that does, and people will hit Exxon up for a whole lot of what it does wrong, but the biggest part of Exxon is that it is owned by stockholders. People created instruments out of that company, and they can buy, trade, and sell these instruments. The thing about it is, it's not just buying and trading a piece of the company. My contention is, I don't mind a capitalism that would have said your stock is worth what your company is worth in material value at that instant in time. What could it be sold for? Not, but they've instituted instruments that add future value, and they've instituted instruments that says we can create a collar around your stocks, or we can create a derivative on your stocks, and all of these are ways to make money from doing absolutely nothing. That is the core of capitalism. The core of capitalism is Bears and Stearns. The core of capitalism is, you take a look at what it is. It's they're banks. The core of capitalism is controlled by banks. These banks create instruments, and all the companies are raw material for these guys to trade as slaves, if you will, trade to go ahead and make money for doing absolutely nothing. John, you want to come in real quickly, and then I'll go ahead and talk about avenues.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I think the core of capitalism is, you see somebody, like I used to live in New York City, you see somebody playing, music on the subway, and you decide to put some change or dollar bills or however you're motivated to do that, and you're essentially, that's a capitalistic venture right there. There's nothing wrong with that. What you're talking about is capitalism that is unregulated because politicians are corrupted. That's not the core of capitalism. The core of capitalism is what you're talking about with the software companies and with all these other things. And there should be regulations on that too.
Right.
But I mean, I agree with you. That the banks are corrupt and all that stuff. But the problem with that is that we, the people, haven't elected politicians to correct that.
John,
in other countries,
John, we have a semantic problem here between what you call capitalism and what I call capitalism, right? When I think capitalism, I think capital and stocks. Stocks are capital and so forth. When I think about that example that you gave, my nomenclature for that has always been free enterprise. You create an enterprise and you profit from your enterprise. That is so what we have here is not a difference of opinion, just a difference in how we explain it. And what I think you have a problem with me defining capitalism the way I define capitalism, because the way you define capitalism is really, that's how you think that's your impression of what it is. My impression is a bit different. My impression, when I think of capitalism, all I think about is stock market. I'll be frank with you. Anytime I think capitalism, that's the first thing that I think, stock market. For you, it's more than just the stock market. For you, it's a lot of other things. So, I mean, and I don't know, the truth of the matter, John, is I don't know where the truth, I'm not the truth because these are both truths. I don't know where the distinction lies. The reason I've always called it free enterprise is to create a distinction between capital markets and what people do to create their own businesses, etc. So I don't know where we're at there. And, it's not something that is worth arguing about as long as we know what the underlying structure is that we're talking about.
Well, the problem is, though, is that, there's this big movement right now, and, right now, like the Democratic Socialist of America, which I agree with on every subject, except that they want to eliminate capitalism. And, and I don't know how they define it, too. Maybe they define it for the same way that you do. And if that's the case, then I'm not really against that. But, I mean, here's what the definition that you just put it up, an economic or political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. So, I mean, essentially it is.
Everybody agrees with that, John. And you see, and that's a problem. If you go ahead and look up communism and if you look up socialism, you're going to see that they have the same definition. What we have is a Webster dictionary, right? And that, again, the way they define these terms makes you wonder if it's a great big cabal that decide, okay, this is how we're going to define these things. Because again, like I mentioned before, when I think capital market, when I think capitalism, I think capital markets. And what is capital markets? The stock market. That's how I see it. That's how DSA sees it as well. Now, DSA has, you're correct. DSA, I think, is for, and I'm a member of all these organizations. If you take a look at, a lot of folks in DSA are really just Marxists. Okay, I am not a Marxist at all. Now, what I think they don't understand, I always tell people one thing. How do you get from point A to point B and define how you're going to do it? And if you cannot define how you get from point A to point B, then you're wasting your time. And I think that's what happens to a whole lot of people. I think a whole lot of people love the idea of this collective. Everything is a collective and it works fine. And they don't see the pitfalls. I see the pitfalls in collectives as well as I see the pitfalls in how I define capitalism, and I see the pitfalls in free enterprise. So I am constantly saying what we need is a hybrid of systems that simply work. Where socialism work, we put it in. Where capitalism, meaning stock, in my definition, stock markets, where you convert things into bodies of, split companies into stocks that can be traded. Where that works, let it work. And then free enterprise, when I form my software company or whatever, that is the kind of definitions I give. Slightly different from yours, but I think you get what the picture is. But we're coming to the end of the show, so you need to give me a closer, my friend.
Good show. I enjoyed it. I just staying on this for a second. I know we got to come to the end of the show, but I mean, within the big tent of like the Bernie movement, I think this is a conversation that we should be having.
Yes.
Because I mean, there is a little bit of a difference here that we're talking about, and I get a little bit worried that people really haven't thought about. What is the next system? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
you're right.
We need to have broad minds and go from there. But I mean, we need to be talking about this.
Look, John, I have no problem with that. And like I always tell people, no one person has the answer. What we have to do is exactly what you just said. we have to get together and we need to talk about these issues. And once we do that, we'll come out somewhere where we need to get there. But we got to get the show closed. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take... Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.